Welcome to Night World. The rain pressed against the city like 1,000 whispering fingers, streaking down windows, sliding along rooftops, pooling in alleys where the darkness felt thick enough to swallow sound. Ethan sat alone in his dim apartment, the only light coming from a muted lamp that flickered weakly beside him. He'd been awake for hours without meaning to, the kind of restless insomnia that made the air feel heavy. His phone lay face up on the coffee table, screen black, silent. Outside, the storm groaned, wind scraping against the glass like something begging to be let in. He tried to focus on the soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the gentle rattle of pipes in the walls, anything normal, but his thoughts drifted to the uneasy feeling he'd carried for days. It felt like a presence behind him, watching, studying, waiting. He shoved the thought away. Midnight was close. He needed sleep. Yet sleep felt like a place he no longer trusted. He pushed himself off the couch, stretched stiff muscles, and turned off the lamp. The apartment sank into near darkness, illuminated only by faint streetlight bleeding through the curtains. As he crossed the room toward his bedroom, his phone buzzed. One short vibration. He froze. Midnight. Why would anyone call him now? He stared at the device glowing softly on the table, screen lighting up the room with a cold blue tint. Unknown number. No contact photo. No location. The phone buzzed again. This time longer, more insistent. Something inside him whispered that he should leave it alone, ignore it, pretend he never heard it. But another part, the one that always reached for curiosity before caution, made him step closer. His hand hovered above the phone for a single heartbeat before he picked it up and pressed it to his ear. "Hello," he said softly. Static answered him, soft and distant, like someone breathing through wet cloth. He frowned, pulling the phone away for a moment to check the number again. Still unknown. "Hello. Who is this?" The static wavered. Then a voice bled through, trembling, faint, barely human. "Ethan, don't go outside tomorrow." His heart seized. His legs nearly buckled beneath him. The voice was his. Not similar. Not familiar. Identical. His own tone, his cadence, his breath catching between words except twisted with a crushing terror he couldn't place. He stared at the dark window, seeing only a vague reflection of himself as the storm continued pounding outside. "Who is this?" he repeated, voice cracking. The voice on the phone gasped, panicked. "Please, listen to me, don't go outside tomorrow." At 9:17 a.m., the call cut off. A beep. Silence. Ethan's skin crawled with cold electricity. His own voice, somehow calling him. Warning him. His pulse hammered violently, his fingers trembling as he lowered the phone. He swallowed hard, trying to process the impossible. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. Morning came too bright, too loud, too real after such an unnatural intrusion. Ethan moved through his routine mechanically, brushing his teeth, staring blankly at the mirror. He examined his reflection closely, half expecting it to move without him. His phone sat on the counter beside the sink, dark and silent. Each minute that passed drew him closer to the time the voice warned him about, 9:17 a.m. He didn't believe in the supernatural. He didn't believe in fate. He didn't believe in anything he couldn't measure or see. But the memory of his own voice begging him not to go outside gnawed at him. He made coffee without tasting it, glancing constantly at the clock. 9:03, he tried to breathe slowly. 9:07, his palms grew damp. 9:10, his heartbeat thudded painfully in his ears. The city outside roared with normal life, cars, chatter, footsteps, but to him everything felt muted, stretched thin like the air before a scream. 9:16, Ethan stepped away from the door and stood in the center of his living room. He watched the doorknob in an irrational fear that something on the other side would twist it. 9:17, he held his breath. And nothing happened. For several long seconds, he waited for some sign, a knock, a crash, a shift in the room, but the world remained still. Eventually he let out a shaky laugh, rubbing his face. He felt foolish, anxious, tense for no reason. His imagination had twisted a strange prank call into a nightmare. He grabbed his jacket and keys, deciding to leave for work after all. The moment he reached the door, His phone vibrated violently in his pocket. He froze mid-step. Slowly, he pulled it out. Unknown number. The same as last night. The same freezing chill slid down his spine. He answered with trembling fingers. Hello. The static returned, harsher this time, like someone choking. Then his voice, came again. Why didn't you listen? Ethan's breath caught. You said not to go outside at 9:17. I didn't mean just at that moment, the voice shrieked, breaking into static. Ethan, you need to leave the apartment. Now. It's already in the building, the call cut off abruptly. Ethan's blood ran cold. He pressed his ear to the phone. Static. He lowered it, staring at the screen. The number vanished instantly from recent calls as if it had never existed. A loud crash echoed from somewhere inside the apartment building, a deep, echoing metallic slam that made his entire chest seize. Then another. Louder. Closer. Ethan clenched his jaw and moved slowly to his peephole, peering into the hallway. The lights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. Something heavy scraped across the floor above him, deliberate, dragging steps. He backed away from the door instinctively. The floorboards under his feet vibrated with low-frequency rumbling, like something was moving through the walls themselves. His phone buzzed again. He stared at it with wide, horrified eyes. The same number. The same impossibility. He answered immediately. What is it? He whispered harshly. What's happening? His own voice answered, broken, terrified, barely coherent. Hide. Don't let it see you. It's drawn to sound. Do you hear me? You have to. The voice gasped sharply, as if something grabbed him. It found me. Ethan's breath stopped. Silence. Then the faint, sickening sound of something wet and heavy dragging across a hard floor. Then the call cut off. The apartment felt smaller by the second, the walls closing in around him as fear coiled cold in his veins. He stumbled backward until he hit the living room wall, chest heaving. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't know how he was calling himself. He didn't know what was coming for him. But the dread in the other voice, his voice, was too real to ignore. Something had found him, or would find him. A terrible pressure filled the air, like the world was holding its breath. Ethan crept silently across the apartment, turning off lights, reducing sound. The room dimmed, shadows lengthening across the floor. He crouched beside the couch, heart pounding so violently he feared the sound alone would expose him. Outside, the storm from earlier had died, replaced by a thick, oppressive stillness. The kind that made his ears ring. Then, footsteps. Heavy. Slow. They echoed faintly through the hallway, followed by a low humming noise, not mechanical, not human. Something in between. Something wrong. Ethan pressed a hand over his mouth to suppress a whimper. The footsteps grew louder. Stopping directly outside his door. The shadow under the door warped, growing in width as if something enormous blocked the hallway light. Subscribe. The doorknob twitched again, slow, deliberate, like fingers testing it rather than turning it. Ethan's entire body locked in place, breath halting painfully in his chest. The shadow beneath the door shifted, widening, then contracting, as if whatever stood outside was breathing in long, slow inhalations. He could hear it now, the faintest rasping, like air being dragged through something broken. The lights in the hallway flickered once, twice, then fell into a strange rhythmic pulse that made the shadow warp unnaturally. Ethan pressed himself deeper into the corner behind the couch, muscles trembling uncontrollably. His fingers dug into the fabric until his nails hurt. The doorknob rattled lightly, not enough to open, but enough to show intent. Then the rasping sound grew louder, shifting into something moist and uneven. Not breathing. More like dragging something wet through a narrow space. Ethan felt bile rise in his throat. Whatever was outside his apartment was not human. He could feel it in the way the air thickened, almost as if something pushed reality aside to make room for itself. Then the knocking came. Not the sharp tap of someone seeking entry, but 3 dull, heavy thuds, each one making the entire door vibrate. Ethan flinched violently, clasping a hand over his mouth to stop his gasp from escaping. The knocking stopped, replaced by a slow scrape, metal against wood, as if claws dragged lazily down the surface. A low hum began to vibrate through the walls, an unsettling frequency that made the lampshade tremble. Ethan felt the sound in his teeth, vibrating through his jaw. He squeezed his eyes shut, silently begging the presence to leave. Eventually, slowly, the shadow under the door retreated. The footsteps, or whatever passed for footsteps, dragged away from his door, fading into the hall. Ethan waited. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. The silence was heavy, unnatural, but the oppressive presence seemed to thin. Carefully, he lifted his phone, trying to check the time. It was dead. Completely dead. It had been at 70% battery an hour ago. He rose from behind the couch, legs shaking as he crept toward the door and pressed his ear against it. Nothing. No breathing. No movement. No rasping. Just a lingering coldness in the metal. He stepped back and looked around the apartment, noticing small details he hadn't seen earlier, the pictures on the wall slightly tilted, the blinds moving despite the closed windows, the faint impression of moisture pooling near the door. Ethan's mind raced. What was that thing? Why did his future voice warn him? And how was he supposed to avoid something that could simply appear in his building? As he paced, trying to understand, something slid into his mind like a whisper, it's drawn to sound. His own voice had said that. If he made noise, even a small one, it would find him. He swallowed hard. He needed help. He needed answers. But he couldn't call anyone, not with a dead phone. He grabbed his charger and plugged it into the wall, hoping the device would spark to life. The moment he did, the overhead lights flickered violently, then steadied. The phone screen stayed black. Suddenly, the screen lit. But not with the charging icon. Instead, the call interface appeared on its own. Incoming call. Unknown number. The same one. Ethan's lungs froze mid-breath. The phone vibrated in his hand, buzzing like it was overheating. The ringtone didn't play. Instead, a low static hiss filled the room, loud enough to make the lamp buzz. He answered instinctively, not out of bravery, but sheer desperation. "Hello," he whispered. Static roared, then the voice came through, his voice, but broken, strained, like someone speaking from deep underwater. "Ethan, don't leave your apartment tonight." His heart thudded painfully. What's happening? What is that thing? Silence. Then a pained gasp. It's not after your life, not exactly. It's after the moment your life ends. It hunts the timeline of your death. Ethan felt dizzy. What does that mean? The voice trembled violently. Do not make noise. Stay hidden. It will pass. But if you leave, it will. The line dissolved into a tortured scream, Ethan's own scream, followed by horrible tearing sounds. The call cut off abruptly. His hand went numb around the phone. He staggered backward, nearly dropping it. Hunts the timeline of your death. That made no sense. No creature should know when someone would die. No creature should be able to call him from the future. His breath quickened, echoing loudly in the tense silence of the apartment. Too loud. He froze, clamping a hand over his mouth. The air shifted, a barely perceptible tremor, like the building exhaled. Then a sound echoed from the hallway, a faint, distant click, like something unlocking. Ethan tiptoed toward the peephole, heart thundering. The hallway stretched empty, but the lights flickered again. One light. 2. 3. Each flickering shut in succession as if something moved beneath them, devouring the brightness. He backed away quickly, feet nearly silent on the floor. In the far distance, he heard the rasping return, slow, deliberate, cutting through the silence with gruesome clarity. It was coming back. Maybe for him. Maybe for something inside his timeline he didn't understand. He retreated toward the bedroom, closing the door as quietly as possible. The lights in the room dimmed on their own. His phone buzzed in his palm. He nearly dropped it. A text message appeared. From the same unknown number. 3 words, "It's inside now." He stared at the screen, breath trembling, heart slamming against his chest. He swallowed hard, slowly turning his gaze toward the bedroom door. He could see the faint shadow of the hallway seeping under the crack. Then the shadow darkened, not because of the hallway lights, but because something blocked them. Something directly outside his bedroom. A soft scrape pressed against the door. Not knocking. Not scratching. More like something dragging a palm across the wood, testing it. The air grew so cold he could see his breath drifting upward in thin, pale threads. He crouched beside his bed, clutching the phone to his chest. "Don't make noise." That voice, his voice, repeated in his head. He forced his trembling body to stay still. But something moved on the other side of the door, something impossibly slow, like a predator savoring the moment before striking. Then the phone vibrated, a soft but distinct buzz. Ethan panicked, fumbling to silence it. Too late. The scraping outside stopped instantly. The shadow under the door shifted sharply. Then, in a way that felt impossibly deliberate, the doorknob turned. Halfway. Then fully. Ethan's blood turned to ice. The door opened an inch, creaking softly. He covered his mouth to suppress a cry. The cold darkness of the hallway bled into the room like spilled ink. A shape loomed beyond the opening, tall, thin, impossible to fully comprehend in the darkness, its edges shifting like heat haze. It leaned inward, the faint rasping now so close it vibrated through the floorboards. And then his phone rang again. "Stay with Night World, and don't forget to subscribe." The phone's vibration was a scream in the silence, a sudden, violent buzz that tore through the room like a flare in pitch blackness. Ethan's entire body jolted, his blood turning to ice. The creature froze in the doorway. He didn't see its face, didn't know if it had one, but he felt its attention snap toward him. The air thickened instantly, suffocating, as if the pressure in the room doubled. His hands shook so hard he nearly dropped the phone. The buzzing continued, loud and relentless, the only sound in the room. The tall, distorted figure leaned further into the doorway, its limbs bending in unnatural ways, its silhouette trembling as though reality struggled to hold it together. Ethan crawled backward instinctively until his spine pressed against the wall, his heart pounding so loudly he feared it would be the next thing that betrayed him. Slowly, mechanically, as if controlled by some large unseen force, the creature's head, or what resembled a head, tilted toward him. A long, rippling shadow drooped from its body, stretching across the floor like dripping tar. Ethan's breath broke, shallow and shaking. The phone buzzed again, somehow even louder, vibrating so hard it nearly skittered from his grasp. And then, just as the creature took its first step into the bedroom, he answered the call. Static exploded in his ear like a violent surge of wind. He clamped a hand over the speaker instinctively, trying to muffle the noise, but it was too late. The sound blasted through the room, echoing off the walls. The creature jerked toward him, its entire form contorting, shuddering as if the noise agitated it. Ethan cried out silently, bracing for the worst. But instead of lunging, the creature seemed to hesitate. Freeze. Even recoil. The static from the phone intensified, becoming a distorted roar. And then, beneath the noise, he heard himself. His voice. Broken. Urgent. Terrified. "Ethan, keep the phone to your ear. It can't cross the signal. Do you hear me?" "It can't." The voice cracked, dissolving into distortion. Ethan pressed the phone tighter, breathing hard, the device shaking violently in his grip. The creature let out a low, guttural vibration that shook the air like a bass note from beneath the floorboards. It shifted its weight, seemingly trying to push forward, but the static surged with each of its movements, almost like the call itself was a barrier. Ethan didn't understand any of this, but he held onto the phone like a lifeline, clinging to his future self's desperate instructions. Slowly, painfully, the creature retreated. Inch by inch. Its movements were erratic, spasmodic, like a marionette being pulled backward against its will. The door creaked wider as its elongated limb slid across the frame, leaving behind faint streaks of dark residue. When the creature finally slipped back into the hallway, the air loosened, just slightly enough for Ethan to draw in a breath without choking. He didn't move, didn't lower the phone, didn't dare make a sound. The static softened, fading to a dull hiss. Then his voice returned. "Ethan, listen to me carefully. You're not safe yet." Ethan swallowed, eyes fixed on the cracked open door. "What is it?" he whispered, barely audible. The voice shuddered on the other end, like someone being shaken while they spoke. It's a collector. A timeline predator. It finds people who are close to dying, anchors to the moment they will die, and feeds on the collapse of that moment. Ethan's heart thudded violently. How do you know that? There was a long, ragged silence on the other end, and then his voice came back, trembling, because I already died. Ethan's vision wavered. The room tilted, shadows stretching and contracting like breathing walls. That's impossible, he whispered, voice breaking. I'm talking to you right now. The voice cracked into a hollow, broken laugh, a sound twisted with despair. I thought that too. Until I realized the moment I'm speaking from isn't the same one you're in. A rush of cold washed over Ethan. Goosebumps erupted across his arms. You're calling from, after, he whispered. Static flared. No. I'm calling from between. From the moment after it got me, but before the timeline sealed. I'm trapped in that sliver, Ethan. The creature rasped from the hallway, a faint sound, but close enough to send cold terror racing down his spine. Ethan pressed the phone harder to his ear. How do I stop it? His future voice inhaled deeply, shakily, as if bracing for something painful. You can't. You can only escape it long enough to sever the connection it has to your death. The phone buzzed sharply, not an incoming call, but something else. A warning. His future voice began to speak faster. You're going to get another call soon. Don't ignore it. Don't hesitate. It will tell you where to go. You have to. The call clipped violently, as though torn apart. A final whisper bled through, run. The line went dead. Silence swallowed the room. Ethan lowered the phone slowly, throat tight, hands trembling uncontrollably. He stared at the darkness in the hallway, waiting for movement. Nothing. But the wrongness in the air didn't recede, it grew thicker, as if the creature still lingered nearby, waiting for an opportunity. His mind raced. Future him was trapped between death and time, calling backward to warn him. But if the creature fed on the moment someone died, then it knew something Ethan didn't. Something inevitable. Something closing in. A sudden vibration nearly made him scream. The phone lit in his hand with a new call. Unknown number. But different from the first. The numbers looked scrambled, like they were glitching. Ethan hesitated only a moment, then answered. There was no static. No voice at first. Just silence, long, heavy silence. Then, faintly, a whisper, Ethan. He recognized it instantly. His voice. But not terrified this time. Not desperate. Calm. Emotionless. You can't run from it. Ethan's blood froze. Who are you? He whispered. Which version of me? The voice didn't answer right away. Then, the one who didn't make it. Ethan's breath stuttered. Why are you calling? A soft, almost sympathetic exhale drifted through the speaker. To tell you the truth. You don't escape it. You never do. The call you got earlier. It's just delaying what already happened. Ethan shook his head violently. No. That's not possible. He said I could escape. The voice sighed. He still had hope. I lost mine. I'm telling you because I think you deserve to stop running from something you can't stop. Ethan felt the world tilt, panic clawing up his throat. Why are you telling me this? Why now? The voice on the phone whispered, because it's standing behind you. Ethan froze. Utterly. Completely. The phone slid slightly in his shaking hand. His breath locked in his chest. Slowly, trembling, he turned his head an inch. He didn't see anything, just the darkened corner of the room. But he felt it. A cold presence creeping up his spine, like a shadow unfolding itself behind him, stretching tall and thin along the wall. Ethan spun around, heart exploding in his chest, but nothing stood there. Nothing visible. Just an empty room. He exhaled shakily. The voice whispered again, it moves between the moments you blink. Ethan felt everything inside him collapse. He squeezed his eyes shut, fighting tears. What do I do? The voice paused, as though considering. Then it said something that chilled Ethan more than anything else he'd heard. Die on your own terms. Ethan dropped the phone. It hit the floor with a thud and slid beneath the bed. He stood shaking violently, breath shallow, mind racing. No. No. Not this. Not him. Not yet. He stumbled backward until he hit the window, gripping the sill for balance. The city lights shimmered far below, distorted by streaks of rain. His reflection in the glass looked ghostly, panicked, fractured. Behind the reflection, for a split second, a tall silhouette flickered, long limbs, shifting edges, towering behind him. Ethan whipped around, nothing. Only shadows. His chest tightened painfully. He needed to leave the apartment. He needed to get somewhere crowded, somewhere alive. Somewhere the creature couldn't isolate him. But as he took a step toward the door, his phone started ringing again from under the bed. He hesitated, pulse hammering in his temples. Then he dropped to his knees and reached under the bed, grabbing the phone with trembling fingers. Unknown number. Again. He answered, breath uneven. Static flooded his ear, loud, sharp, electrical, like the sound of a storm compressed into a single frequency. Then the voice, the terrified version, returned, gasping. Ethan, don't listen to the other me. That voice, that's not me. It's the creature learning your shape. Ethan's entire body broke into cold sweat. What? The voice screamed, a sound of pure terror. It mimics the voices of those it kills. It mimics the moment after they die. Don't trust anything it tells you. Ethan's legs nearly gave out. His breath came in short, jagged bursts. The creature was pretending to be him. Whispering hopelessness. Manipulating him. Pushing him toward his own death. Tell me how to escape. Ethan shouted, voice cracking. The voice on the phone trembled violently. You have to break the timeline anchor. You have to sever its connection to your death moment. You need to. A horrible crunching sound cut through the line like bones snapping. Ethan screamed into the phone, tell me how. The voice whispered, weaker now, go to the place where you die. Change it. Change anything. Break the moment. Don't let it happen the same way. Static surged. Ethan, run. The call ended. Ethan's pulse pounded so violently he felt lightheaded. The place where I die. He had no idea where that was. No clue. But the creature did. And it was closing in. A sudden, violent crash echoed in the hallway, the sound of something enormous slamming into the wall. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then heavy, dragging footsteps returned. Ethan stepped back, gripping the phone like a weapon that could barely protect him. The lights flickered, dimmed, then glowed a sickly yellow. The creature's shadow passed under the bedroom door again, distorted, twitching. Ethan felt the air pull tight around him, like gravity thickened. He stumbled toward the balcony door. Locked. He fumbled with the latch, fingers slipping. The door wouldn't budge, as though something pressed against it from the outside. His phone buzzed again. A text. One sentence, it's coming through the walls. He stared at the bedroom wall opposite him. The paint rippled. Just slightly. Just enough to show that something massive, pushed from the other side. The material stretched, bulged, like a membrane straining to contain a shape behind it. Ethan's scream caught in his throat. He didn't know where to run. Didn't know what to do. Didn't know where he would die or how to stop it. But one thing became painfully, sickeningly clear as the wall began to split open. The creature wasn't hunting him. It was correcting something that should have already happened. And Ethan was running out of time to figure out what. If the story still has your pulse racing, don't forget to subscribe. The wall bulged inward with a sickening elasticity, the paint cracking, plaster crumbling like brittle bone. Ethan backed against the balcony glass as the bulge pulsed, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat made of shadows. The room vibrated with a low-frequency hum that rattled his chest and made his teeth ache. The drywall split open in a long, jagged tear. A thin, impossibly elongated hand slipped through, grey, dripping, its fingers bending at unnatural angles as it gripped the torn edges. Another hand followed, pushing wider. The drywall bowed, cracked, and crumbled as the creature forced its head through next, a smooth, featureless shape that twitched as if it couldn't decide which form to take. Ethan covered his mouth to keep from screaming, breath trembling violently. The air turned icy, freezing in his lungs like shards of glass. He stumbled toward the bedroom door, but as he grabbed the handle, the metal seared his palm with freezing pain. The door was locked. Not by the knob. By something else. Behind him, the creature pulled itself further through the wall, limbs stretching and rearranging like a wet shadow learning how to mimic bones. Ethan's phone lit in his hand with a violent flicker. A new call. Unknown number. Trembling, he answered. Static blared like a scream. Then a broken whisper. Ethan ran to the stairs. Now the call cut violently. The wall tore fully open behind him. Ethan lunged for the window and shoved it upward. The storm had passed, leaving the air heavy with humidity, the city lights flickering through the fog. He climbed onto the ledge, gripping the frame, heart slamming in his chest. The fire escape was 2 feet to the right, a jump, but not impossible. The creature's limbs scraped across the floor behind him, dragging like wet ropes. Ethan didn't look back. He swung his legs outward, bracing against the slick surface of the building. Then he pushed off. His fingers caught the cold metal of the fire escape railing. Pain shot through his arm as he hoisted himself up and scrambled onto the platform. Inside the apartment, the distorted figure reached the open window. Its long, skeletal fingers curled around the frame, bending the metal inward as though it were soft clay. Ethan gasped and stumbled down the stairs, feet slamming hard, metal rattling under his weight. He didn't look back until he reached the second platform, and what he saw nearly made him fall over the railing. The creature was crawling out of the window like an insect being reborn. Its limbs stretched to impossible lengths, its body flattening, widening, twisting as it adapted to the space. It was following him. Hunting him. Tracking the scent of his death through the air. Ethan bolted down the rest of the fire escape, lungs burning, sweat cold on his skin. He burst onto the alley pavement, stumbling over wet dumpsters and broken glass. The alley was silent except for the faint, wrong hum that seemed to throb through the walls. Ethan sprinted toward the street, shoes slapping through puddles. His phone vibrated again, another call. He answered mid-run. The voice was frantic. "You're close, Ethan. You're so close, keep running straight, don't stop, don't." A monstrous screech tore through the line. Ethan jerked the phone away from his ear as static exploded. Then a new voice emerged, low, inhuman, glitching through frequencies like a broken speaker. "Found you." Ethan dropped the phone in terror and shoved it into his pocket as he sprinted into the street. Headlights streaked past. Horns blared. People walked along the sidewalks, unaware of the impossible horror crawling down the side of the apartment building behind him like an enormous, shifting parasite. Ethan shoved through pedestrians, breath tearing through his lungs. He didn't know where he was going, only that the voice had told him to run straight. A crosswalk appeared ahead, the red light glowing bright. He hesitated 1 second, and in that second, his phone buzzed again. A text appeared on the lock screen, "Don't wait." Ethan forced his legs into motion, sprinting across the street as a car slammed on its brakes, tires screaming. A horn blared. Someone shouted. Ethan didn't stop. He reached the opposite sidewalk and kept running, the night spinning around him in streaks of neon and rain-washed pavement. Block after block blurred past. His legs burned. His chest hurt. His breath tore raw through his throat. He turned a corner and froze. He'd seen this place before. A nondescript bus stop under a flickering streetlight. Cracked pavement. A vending machine humming beside a convenience store. It hit him like a punch. This was the place from his recurring dream weeks ago, the dream where he had seen himself lying on the ground, paramedics kneeling beside him, lights flashing red and blue. He hadn't understood it then. He did now. This was where he died. His phone vibrated again. A call. He answered automatically, chest heaving. The terrified version of his voice returned. "Ethan, you're there, good, listen to me, this is your anchor point. The creature is tied to this moment, this place, this death." Ethan looked around wildly. Nothing seemed dangerous. No cars. No crowds. Just the hum of the vending machine and the flickering streetlight. "How do I stop it?" he demanded. The voice rasped painfully. "Change what happens. Anything. Just don't repeat the same moment. Don't let the timeline align." Ethan's heart thudded. But I don't know what actually happens here. The voice whispered, "You will. It's about to happen." The streetlight buzzed loudly, too loudly. The entire world seemed to pause. The hum deepened. The air thickened. The shadows stretched unnaturally across the pavement. Ethan turned slowly. A figure stood at the end of the street. Tall. Thin. Wrong. The creature. Standing perfectly still, its featureless head tilted toward him. The streetlight flickered again. Then again. Each flicker stretched reality into strange snapshots, the creature closer in each brief blackout. Ethan stepped backward, breath shattering, pulse roaring in his ears. "Ethan," his phone whispered weakly. "This is it. This is the moment. Change it, please." The creature took one slow, deliberate step forward. The shadow it cast stretched across the pavement like a living stain. Ethan stumbled back until his legs hit the bus stop bench. He reached for anything, a rock, a bottle, anything, and found nothing. The creature moved again, slipping between flickers of light. Ethan screamed and bolted sideways, toward the vending machine. The world warped. A high-pitched whine filled the air. His phone vibrated violently. A call forced itself onto the screen. Final call. The same unknown number. Ethan answered instinctively. Silence. Then, softly, a new voice. His voice. Calm. Steady. Not terrified, not broken. "Ethan. Listen. I'm not the version that died. I'm the version that survived." Ethan stopped moving, breath catching painfully. "What? How?" The voice inhaled deeply. "By doing one thing differently." Ethan's hand shook violently around the phone. "What thing?" The voice said, "Don't run from the moment. Run into it." Ethan stared at the creature advancing, tall, distorted, unstoppable. "I'll die." The voice whispered, "Only if you freeze." The creature's shadow swallowed half the street, vibrating with a low, bone-deep hum. The surviving version of him said, "Break the timeline. Choose your own death or choose your own survival. But choose something the creature isn't expecting." Ethan clenched his jaw, chest heaving. "And what's that?" The phone's speaker crackled softly. "Attack it." Something inside Ethan snapped. Maybe it was madness. Maybe desperation. Maybe courage found only at the edge of annihilation. He grabbed the vending machine's metal trash bin, heavy, rusted, and charged. The creature reared back, limbs stretching, shadow pulsing. Ethan screamed and swung the bin with everything he had. The instant metal connected, the air tore open with a sound like reality ripping. The creature convulsed, collapsing inward, its body folding like paper dragged into a black hole. A vacuum-like force ripped leaves, dust, loose gravel into the collapsing form. Light bent. Shadows imploded. The creature emitted a final, distorted shriek, the sound of a moment in time dying, then vanished completely, sucked into itself. The air snapped silent. Ethan collapsed to his knees, shaking violently, gasping for breath. His phone buzzed weakly. He lifted it to his ear. The surviving voice whispered, "You did it. You broke the moment. I'm proud of us." Ethan let out a broken laugh, tears burning his eyes. "What happens now?" The voice exhaled softly. "Now the timeline resets. You're free." Static swelled gently, no longer violent, more like the soft wind of a distant place. "This is goodbye, Ethan." The line fell silent. The call ended. For good. Ethan knelt there for a long moment, chest trembling, drenched in sweat and rain. The world felt real again, solid, grounded. The streetlight steadied. The vending machine hummed normally. His pulse slowed. His breath returned. He stood slowly, staring at the spot where the creature had been. Nothing remained. Not even a stain. He turned, exhausted, and began walking home, each step feeling like one borrowed from a life he wasn't meant to have. Hours later, as dawn broke across the city, his phone vibrated once, a single, gentle buzz. A notification. No number. No name. Just one message, "Live well." Ethan smiled weakly, pocketing the phone. He didn't look back. But as he entered his apartment and closed the door, his phone buzzed again. Incoming call, Unknown. The same number as the very first night. He froze. Then the phone rang a second time. A third. And a familiar voice whispered from the speaker before he even answered. Ethan, it's not over. Stay with Night World, and subscribe.